Welcome back to the City Ramble. Joining us, a very special guest. Unfortunately, not you, Anne and Bucky. You've had plenty of introductions on this show over the years, but it's a returning appearance for Mr. Hugh Murray, joining us from the Emerald Isle. Hugh, how's things?
Great, man. Great. Obviously, we spend quite a lot of time together, don't we, off camera? You know, going around Europe and Ireland and the UK. So it's probably overdue. I think it's probably well over a year now since I was last on the City Ramble. I don't even know if I've been on since it's been called the City Ramble. So
you spoke to us about Kyogo Furuhashi when you broke the news that City were signing him, and you were wrong.
My claim to fame, yes. Me and Fabrizio, we go way back, you know. So it's one of those things that, you know, sometimes we get things right, sometimes we get things wrong. But no, listen, it's great to be on. Thank you very much for having me, both of you.
It's a pleasure. Adam,
somehow Hugh and I have never crossed paths in person, considering every time I'm over there, I'm with you, Amos. Whether if I'm going to games or just bopping around Manchester, I'm normally with you. So it's crazy that
we've never actually seen you two in the same room.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen, man. We'll make it happen for sure.
There we go. City Rumble matchmaking. Maybe that's our next venture. We get into the online dating world. Adam, I was good. Yeah, or mine, or his. Adam, I was going to say, if you were a sports journalist, what would your catchphrase be? But obviously, famously, you are a sports journalist. So if you were a self-obsessed sports journalist, what would your "here we go"-esque catchphrase be?
And that's how the cookie crumbles.
No. There you go. That's like peak Yank brain there.
It's a How I Met Your Mother reference for anyone who's watched How I Met Your Mother. The one of the main characters is a news anchor, and all of the people she's going up for a high end job, and all the people around her that are applying for the same job have a catchphrase, and she doesn't have one, and it's just like painful while she's trying to come up with one. And I don't think I could come up with one on the spot either.
Right, fair enough. The reference just about land. Adam, we'll get into, obviously, we did a massive match reaction to the Arsenal game, and predictably, as City-Arsenal matches tend to do, this has rumbled on considerably over the last 24 hours or so. I want to, obviously, neither of you are on the actual review show itself, so I want to give you a bit of time to sort of talk through your thoughts and feelings. Obviously, this is a little bit later on than the immediate match review, but Arsenal 1, City 1, obviously, we know what happened, we know how it went down. How did you feel? What are you feeling, sort of, even still 24 hours later?
I mean, there's a million different views you can take on this. I personally didn't watch the game live because I was camping over the weekend and had no cell service. So I had watched the game on replay and saved myself the spoilers. I had my phone turned off and everything. So I actually had like a weird build up to the game because I knew there was this thing looming in my day that I had to keep my phone on silent. I couldn't check my phone, all that kind of stuff. And so I would say the micro of City conceding in stoppage time after what was such a valiant defensive effort, and a type of defensive effort that I don't think we've seen probably since the treble season. I mean, that type of character in a game, I don't think we've seen that in quite a long time. But I think the macro of going into this week with the Derby, the Napoli game, and then going to the Emirates, if you offer me 7 out of 9 points, you don't tell me how those 7 points are accumulated, I'm still taking it every single time without a doubt. Even in City's peak when they were winning trebles and winning 4 in a row and all that, if you offer me 7 out of 9 points in this week, I'm taking it. So I think coming into the seasons, I've not been shy of saying that I don't have massive expectations in that. There's obviously loads of quality in this team, and there is quality and enough experience to compete for every major trophy. But if it's some good weeks, some bad weeks, considering the squad upheaval that City have had in the last 12 to 18 months, that's not a surprise. But I think the level of consistency they showed this week in, obviously, Pep playing the same 3 lineups in a row was a shock, but the level of consistency in, I think, mentality, and the way they dealt with situations. There was very little setbacks, I would say, in the Napoli game and against United. But I think the way that they dealt with setbacks and stuff like that, I felt, honestly, I feel very impressed. And I wouldn't say that my expectations for this season have risen after this week, but I think that if we have more weeks like that, it'll be less of a surprise perhaps than it was coming into the season.
Hugh, it was such a weird game to sort of dissect, wasn't it? In the sense that City had done so well for so long, conceded really late on. That was deflating. But at the end of the day, you're sort of trying to put it into context of this week overall, and obviously the departure from how City usually play. It was so like the emotions were so contrasting. And I know you personally have kind of gone on a bit of a roller coaster, sort of from where you started off and like where you kind of got to, and like then trying to sort of make sense of it yourself. And I don't blame anyone for doing that because it was such a weird game. But where are you sat now, sort of again 24 hours after full time?
I'm back down to earth for a starter anyway. I was
Yeah,
definitely on Mars. I don't shy away from it, and you know me well enough to know I'm a very emotional
yeah.
football fan, whether it's win or lose. For the hours that follow the game, for a few hours that follow the game, I'm always in the height of whatever the emotion gives me. The full time result. Yesterday was a whole new experience. I think as a Manchester City fan under Pep Guardiola for so many reasons. You can break down the whole style adaptation. You can break down the substitute choices. You can break down the way we simply approach the game, the mentality and the character we showed following the week or the two games that were before that week. But like I say, when my emotions get the better of me, that was totally in context of the 90 minutes that we experienced yesterday. And I was overcome with this upset and anger to have watched my team, my players graft like animals, like they really did. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that if we can. But I was so impressed. I've always been so impressed with the way we attack and the way we play football, and it's beautiful to watch. We rarely watch our team defend like animals and we go, wow, that was amazing. So to have that goal conceded in the 92nd, 93rd minute, I was just, my head went hot. I was like, no, this isn't how this was meant to go. After the work we've put in, we did so well. We nullified Arsenal in pretty well every regard. We know where their dangers are, both the flanks between Madueke, Saka, Trossard, Eze, you name it, whoever was put out there for 99.9% of the game, between Kuzanov, Nunes, Nico, Vardiol, all these lads put in massive shifts. And I just went, damn. For about an hour after the game, I was really on it. But then, look, I went there for dinner with my family, and nothing a few chicken wings can fix. So no, look, obviously we were at the derby together last week, and that was amazing for loads of reasons. Get one over on them. The performance was great, a lot of positives. And then you're in the scenario of, is this a flash in the pan? Is this a purple patch? Our record against the Big Six over the last 2 seasons is really poor. So there's a major test coming in 7 days' time. And then you have the obstacle of Napoli in the middle in a competition that we really made a mess of last season. So I felt this week was never going to be make or break for what the season could become, but it was going to be a massive litmus test of where this team is at. And my expectations for City this season, they're constantly changing, because on paper, I'm looking at that squad going, we could beat anyone in the world. But when there's so many variables involved, like new players, new adaptations of our system, like yesterday, you kind of have to allow that a period of grace. And how long that may be, we don't know. But all in all, I agree with the overarching point that everyone's really at right now is 7 points from 3 really, really difficult games on paper. All of them, 3 of them for different reasons, it's a phenomenal week. It's an absolutely phenomenal week, considering the Brighton game, considering the Tottenham game, and the downfall that came with them after the Wolves game. So, look, I don't know if we're going to talk about individuals or that kind of thing, but all in all, I'm super satisfied. Really hard venue yesterday. We know that, and we gave a phenomenal account of ourselves.
I think one thing that Hugh brought up early on there it was the substitutions. And I think my only reservation, I guess, on like a micro level from this game was those subs late on. And I know, especially given playing the same team 3 times in a row this early on in the season, I'm sure some of those players, especially like Haaland, I don't know about Foden because he came off like 67th minute around there or something, and that was a bit earlier than I expected. But
he
has had
played
he's had
a lot,
fitness
has he?
issues.
Yeah, he's barely played.
But I think towards the end of the game, I felt a bit different when it was maybe 85 minutes onwards than it was maybe the hour mark onwards, because the substitutions, I thought City really lost their outlet, especially when there was no Haaland and no Foden up there. And when it basically became hope to God you get the ball to Jeremy Doku and he skins about 8 players on the halfway line and can make his way to the opposition corner. And that was just about the only outlet. And I think when that outlet became Doku, and if you did get it up there and it was kind of, John Stones maybe stepping up into midfield or Josko Gvardiol stepping up into midfield, it felt like it got a little scatterbrained in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And I think that's how we end up with a scatterbrained goal that City conceded. And it wasn't necessarily, I thought it was spot on, you Ollie, and Joe on the review show yesterday, that it wasn't necessarily one of those classic bozo moments that we've seen in the past 12 months. It was very much a couple of players had their wires crossed. A couple of players, one of which is Donnarumma, who was thrown straight into this week after basically, having just met his teammates, and he comes straight into one of the biggest weeks of the season early on. But I think that's where my head went a little bit, was just like, it felt really scatterbrained at the end, and they weren't sure if they wanted to play a high line or if they wanted to drop deep. And I think that's where the Martinelli goal comes from. But certainly when it was the very organized 11 players or 10 players behind the ball and hoof it out of there and hope somebody can hold it up and get you, 3 to 4 minutes of possession and slow things down. That felt like a really impressive, like, new wrinkle in this team that I don't think any of us expected to see. And I think you can only really take positives away from that, because this team may be inconsistent this season. If they find themselves 1-0 up at the Allianz Arena in April in a Champions League round of 16 game, if you see a couple of more games like this, you do have that confidence to say, okay, if they park 10 men behind the ball right now for the next 30 minutes, they can get out of here with a 1-goal advantage or whatever it is that they're playing for. So I think there's like basically only positives to take from this, because I think the goal was the goal, and those things happen. But yeah, I think mostly positives. Just the substitutions at the end, it felt like people didn't quite know exactly where they were meant to be, and it got a little bit scatterbrained. But those things happen to a team that's still sort of figuring itself out.
Yeah, 1 or 2 of them did feel a bit like out of desperation, as opposed to having a plan,
Yeah.
which I guess 5 games into the season, you can say fair enough.
And it has to be mentioned
Go on.
on the substitutes point, like, that Arsenal squad is maybe the best they've had
Oh,
in
yeah.
20, 30 years. Like, it was built for them to make 4 or 5 changes, and nothing changes for them. I think Arteta spoke about this week, right? He made the rugby comparison that you have the starters and the finishers. Like, his players that he's bringing off the bench are there to make an impact and take you one step further in a game, whereas maybe where City is at the moment, you could tell with these substitutions that Pep made, that there is a drop off when Haaland has to come off and your outlet is Jeremy Doku by himself, or Savinho coming in for Doku at the moment is a drop off with where those 2 players are, at least in this current time. So I think that was also a stark difference in the game, in the way that both the managers could make substitutions.
Yeah, for sure. Hugh, do you find it refreshing that Guardiola, 12 months on from, well, not 12 months on, because obviously the Arsenal game where we got slapped 5-1 was in January, but it was around this sort of time last year where it started unraveling a little bit for City, and we saw, the so-called unks being asked to play in a way that City just couldn't maintain anymore. And it wasn't until sort of after the Arsenal 5-1 where Guardiola and City sort of changed their philosophy a little bit. But do you find it refreshing that Pep has kind of gone, you know what, in the second half, and I think it's worth mentioning as well, because I've seen a lot of talk about City parking the bus from minute 1. That's just bollocks. Arsenal were naff in that first half, and City were actually pressing them really well. It was only after, obviously, the Kusanov injury happens, and then City get a little bit leggy, which is understandable. But do you find it refreshing that Guardiola in that second half was allowing his team to bunker down a little bit and say, you know what, in previous years we might have tried to play the same way and would have conceded 3. As it goes, it's a bit of a defensive mix-up, in my opinion, with the back line and the goalkeeper, but it's also an incredible finish. And at the end of the day, you say, fair enough, that's football, that happens. For me, I did like that sort of pragmatism that we haven't necessarily seen in abundance with Guardiola in the past.
It's probably the only flaw in stylistically that I've ever been able to put on Pep Guardiola. It's that he's always been very stern in his beliefs and how football's meant to be played. You know, rain, hail, or snow, whether we're winning, losing, or drawn. Pep has always wanted to play his way, and that way has always kind of evolved ever so slightly over the years. But to see a total, 180 and turn us back entirely to his flow of football, it was brilliant, and I would have loved that last season. That whether we had the firepower to have done that last season is a different question, but last season, the blueprint to get at Manchester City and beat Manchester City, whether it's at home or away, became really available. Everyone had it. And really, average teams, as far as Premier League standard goes, were able to execute it and take something off us. There's too many to go through individually. It was simply just hit us with pace. Hit us with pace, overload us in the middle, either or, and you have a good chance at taking points out of a game against us. Whereas, to see us obviously go to a superior team right now in terms of their stage of evolution, where they're at as a squad and what their expectations are, and adapt their own style of play and refrain from trying to go toe to toe with them, which would have probably been suicidal if you ask me. I think if we did try to go meet them halfway and outpossession them, it wouldn't have ended well. Our team just simply isn't ready for that as of right now. That's not to say when they come to the Etihad in 5-6 months we won't be. I think by then we'll be more than capable of going out.
I think in 2 weeks, 3 weeks would have been fine. And this is kind of pissed me off from City fans. Some City fans, it has to be said, sort of acting like this style of play is end game. That when Burnley rock up at the Etihad next week, or when we go and play Everton or Bournemouth or whatever, this is what we're going to see. It was obviously a means to an end. We mentioned this yesterday, but this isn't what we're going to be seeing from City every single week.
No, but with the way I feel about yesterday, even just slightly over 24 hours later, I think Pep would have done things slightly differently. Even though this is very new to the players and it's very new to us, it's still somewhat very new to him. We've never properly seen him go and, send this style of play. I probably think he wouldn't have made the Haaland substitution. I think that might have been an in the moment. Maybe I'm sure we saw him at one point on TV anyway, asking Haaland, was he okay? Give him the thumbs up. Maybe Haaland said, I'm tired or I'm starting to get tight in a certain area. I don't know, but Haaland was one of the best defenders in the pitch. We know how dangerous Arsenal are via set pieces and that kind of thing, and he was there to clean up loads of them, as well as offering the outball. I think he may have tried to just persevere with Haaland, even if he's tired, even for that fear factor for Arsenal, just to know he's up there. And then the Doku one thing, I think, as much as he has his flaws, for me, he had an excellent second half. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was another outball for us as well. And I think the Arsenal defenders were fearing him as much as we were fearing them. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm happy to know that Pep is okay with doing that if needs be. But I don't expect that needs be to be often. I do fully expect us to go out, with all due respect to Burnley, this Saturday and play our football and play the way we want to play. Don't let them dictate the game. I'd love to ask both of you the question that I asked to Twitter last night, because I'm curious. We have Liverpool coming to the Etihad in November, isn't that right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Would you like to see that style yesterday deployed, or is it no? We're in our home patch. They may be probably far superior to us on paper right now. What do you guys think about this? Now that we know this exists in Pep's brain.
Yeah, I think the home stadium's a big part of this, isn't it, Adam? In the sense that if it's at Anfield, fine. Atletico Madrid in 2021-22 season, we saw City do something very similar and go through to the Champions League semi-finals. There exist occasions where you, away from home, I'm more than happy abandoning principles. But I think if a little bit why I thought it was bad the way Arsenal set up against City on Sunday, because they were at home, they had the initiative. It was their statement to make. But Adam, me personally, I think if you're at home, you kind of have to go on the front foot a little bit.
I also think it's totally different circumstances playing Arsenal than it is playing Liverpool, because I think Pep almost laid down a gauntlet for Arsenal to be like, okay, like you are the team in the driver's seat potentially in the title race, at least in terms of between City and Arsenal, whereas it's always been maybe City with the upper hand. And he kind of said, you come break us down now, because it's something you've struggled to do basically throughout most of the Arteta era. Whereas we know Liverpool's weaknesses, and it's that they can be got at in transition. They have, weak defensive fullbacks, and, if you want to have Jeremy Doku kind of going after his fullback all game, I think that's something that you would do against Liverpool. So I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't care if we saw it. If Pep set up that way and thought I can get more on the break. I mean, we're 9 years into this. I've still got pretty much full trust in him. If that's how he wants to set up, that's how he'll do it, and that's fine. But I think against Liverpool, it's especially as you mentioned at home. I think they're a team that can be got at, and most teams have shown that. It's just a matter of if you can contain them the other direction. So I think it will look completely different from Arsenal because they're almost two polar extremes in the way that they play. Like, we know Arsenal don't give a lot of space. They don't give up a lot defensively. We know it's the opposite for Liverpool. They give up a load of space, and they're going to try and beat you 5-4 or whatever. For me, I think that's a very good question. But for me, this question that's been kind of burning in my mind while I was listening to you guys chat was, does this game look any different if Ederson is still in town and Gigi Donnarumma is not here? Because I think so much of the way that City set up and allowed Arsenal to have the ball, allowed them to have some crosses from out wide, was because Donnarumma, and he showed it from minute one, is just so commanding in his area, and he will come out, and if he decides I'm coming out, I'm punching this, he's going to punch it. Whereas that's not something, we felt as much confidence with Ederson. I wonder if Ederson is still in town, maybe we don't see, Kusanov and Ruben Diaz in that back four. Maybe it's Rico Lewis and Ederson, and you try and play out more because you have players with different skill sets. I wonder how much of Pep, showing this new wrinkle is because he has a goalkeeper that kind of has no problem sitting on his goal line and dealing with aerial balls.
I wish he'd sat in his goal line for the Martinelli strike, I tell you, because he went wandering a little bit.
But answer me that, like, does it look any different with Ederson in town?
I think, Hugh, City, the short answer, I think it is because I don't think City can afford to concede as many set pieces because they're just not dealing with it as well.
I agree, and that's one, as always, with all due respect to Ederson, I don't think he demands that same presence that Donnarumma does. I think Arsenal, I think you could visibly see Arsenal getting frustrated with their own set pieces, which is not something you see often, because Arsenal seem to love to kind of fan out the box and then really explode into the 6-yard box and just cause chaos, and a big powerhouse will get ahead on it. Now, look, commentator made a great point yesterday. We're actually physically a huge team now, which isn't normal for us. So that goes a long way. Most of the team now is over 6 foot, 6'1", which is new for us. But then it's just a simple fact that Donnarumma, like Adam said, he commanded that box, the 6-yard box. Like, I felt comfortable after 2 or 3 corner kicks, which was weird. That if you put it in the 6-yard box, I fancied the big guy to get it out of the box or to get a hand on it or clear the danger somehow. And that's exactly what happened. It is almost kind of symbolic that the goal that let us down from getting the 3 points actually wasn't a set piece. Whereas I think potentially if that game's played 12 months ago, under the same circumstances, even with the same outfielders, not going back to the unks, just simply the goalkeeper, I do think Arsenal probably score from a set piece at some point, simply for the fact that Ederson he wasn't bad at it, but it wasn't his thing. And then there's also the conversation of, if Ederson's in nets and not Donnarumma, do we even play as defensive as we did, or do we try and meet them more?
Well, that's exactly what I mean. Is I think you have a different outlet to. You don't have to hoof it. Essentially, right? You can trust that you can go back to Ederson under pressure and he'll pick out to Johnny Reinders or Rodri or whoever else. It's a completely different outlet. And I think this is probably too many chains in the thought bubble here. But I do wonder if the back four looks different as well because it's Ederson. And I think maybe we see a Rico Lewis and a John Stones from the start. I mean, John Stones is obviously fitness pending at all times. But
would City be, say, with the grace of God, everyone's fit, not necessarily, fully firing, whatever, but everyone's just available? Do City have enough quality to beat Arsenal like that?
Yeah.
As in, trying to play through them? Because I don't know if they do. I don't know if they do.
A little bubble with a thumbs down has popped up next to your head. Are you answering your own question?
for some reason, when
Is
you
there
stick
like an
your thumb
AI
up,
thing that I'm unaware of
I
on
think
our
so.
streaming software
Yeah,
here?
for the benefit of the tape, we are just sort of sticking our hands up and down. Hugh, I'll ask the question that is a difficult one to answer, and I reckon we'll change week on week just because that's football. Are City in a title race? Do you think, or can City be in a title race?
Yeah, they can. Absolutely, they can. And I think this period up to that Liverpool game that I mentioned will determine that. I think, with all due respect to everyone we're playing over the next couple of weeks, on paper, they're quite favourable fixtures. I don't think we have a Big Six fixture. I could be wrong. I don't think we do up until we play Liverpool in November. Absolutely, we can. Now, look, I don't have the same confidence and faith in this City team that I did in previous ones that there's going to be a 10, 12, 14 game winning streak. But I also don't think Liverpool are as invincible, maybe, as people seem to think they are. I think they're a fantastic team and they have the capacity to go on and do something amazing. But we're yet to see it. Same way we're yet to see can City go on and be title challengers. I don't see why not. Like when you have Pep Guardiola as your manager and you have the players we do, when you put in the performance like he did yesterday with no Cherky, Oscar Bob didn't feature, no Ryan Aït-Nouri, who else were we missing? It was someone else, Aït-Nouri, Cherky, and Marmoush.
Kovacic as well, but I mean,
these are all big players in their own regard who I expect to have very big futures at the club, both short term and long term. So I don't see why not. I mean, look, that will probably change and continue to change week on week. If we drop points here and there against a team that maybe don't expect to, my head will be on Mars as usual for about an hour, and I'll tell you the league race is over. But as of right now,
if City drop
the
points
week
to
they've had-
Burnley, Kyle Walker's Burnley. My head won't be on Mars; it'll be in a different galaxy, a different. It'll turn into a supernova.
So as of right now, it's TBD, to be decided. But I've not lost any faith. Like, just stay on the coattails, man. Just see how far we can take it. This City team is very much in transition, so it's such a tough question. But I'll get back to you properly with a straight answer at some point in a few months.
Yeah, totally. Adam?
I don't know. I'm quite torn about it. I came into this season saying if it looks like the 1920 season, it wouldn't shock me, and that City may finish well off the pace of the title race, but they'll also blitz many teams. And they'll score a load of goals, and they may have months where they look incredible, and then they'll have months where they look, inconsistent. I don't know. I think if I were to say that City are in a title race, it's probably would be out of a lack of consistency from the others and not from City themselves. I mean, I don't have the feeling yet that this team is going to, as Hugh said, go win.
Champions League then? Because
that's a different thing.
Yeah.
That's completely different. I think that City absolutely could do well in any cup competition this year because it does look like they have multiple ways that they can play. And if they need to bunker in for 90 minutes, they can do that. If they play against weaker opposition and they want to play all of Doku, Savinho, Foden, Haaland in the team, they can play that way as well. So I think there's absolutely a world in which City finish third and win the Champions League. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all.
I totally agree with that. I'm actually weirdly more optimistic about the Champions League than I am the Premier League. Now, look, the league phase of the Champions League has its own difficulties, but if we were to get into a knockout stage, which I really hope we do, and I think we can, the fact that the two-legged affair, if you play at home first, you can go your gung-ho style, and now we know this style exists for a potential Bernabeu, which is inevitable. Even though we're having it in the league phase, it would probably happen in the knockout phase too. And like the fact that you can keep that Arsenal squad at bay yesterday, because they unloaded their whole tank yesterday, missing the players I've mentioned, and at our current stage of our transition would give me a lot of confidence for European football after Christmas. See where we are then. Obviously, pending there's no major injuries to any major players, if this squad can stick together and continue to evolve together the way it is, there's nothing stopping us having a really good crack at the Champions League, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, it feels like City have probably got the two players most suited to a deep Champions League run in Donnarumma and Haaland at opposite end of the pitches, which, you have a good goalkeeper, you have a good striker, you'll usually end up doing well in the competition. Adam, we'll wrap up then. Obviously, we turn attention to Huddersfield tomorrow for the League Cup. Any sort of parting thoughts from this game? It's funny, isn't it? We remember the Liverpool and the Klopp versus Pep classics, and I think it's safe to say the Arteta versus Pep encounters aren't exactly going to be remembered well in history, but they always seem to deliver drama, if not on the pitch, off it at the same time. But I echo what we've said in 2 episodes now. I think City fans should be happy, should be positive, regardless of where your start point was. If you were really down in the dumps, you should be feeling a little bit more optimistic. Maybe not if you were already optimistic, you should be thinking, treble incoming. But at the same time, it feels like, much needed vibes boost the last week has been.
Yeah, I think this week, what it really shows you is that anything is possible with this team, and that could be negative, that could be positive, but there will be weeks where you blitz some teams and you look really good against the Italian champions, and you play United off the park, and there may be 10-15 minutes in a game where City gets swamped, and it might just happen because there's young players in this team. There's players that haven't played at this level. There's players playing with each other for the first time this season. So, yeah, I think if anything, last year, once we got to about the halfway point of the season, it felt like we know how just about everything is going to play out the remainder of this season, just based on what we've seen. I think it's going to be a long time before we have that feeling with this team, because I think there are an infinite amount of possibilities that this team could have this season. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. Hugh, at the end of the day, we're not Arsenal fans, so anything from this point on is a success.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're not starved, are we? We're still relatively spoilt at 25 years young for myself. So, I'm not stressing over the idea of having even a trophy this season. It kind of is what it is. But I'm very excited. We've now seen Pep is not as stubborn as maybe we once thought he was. We're seeing certain players improving. We're seeing new things all the time. So it's a new horizon. It's a new dawn. It's a new day, as they say. So look, bring on Huddersfield tomorrow. I'm sure that'll be good fun. And then Burnley's a massive game on Saturday. It really is. Continue the momentum. Keep that feel-good factor going. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man.
Amos, you don't feel a slight tinge of jealousy when you're at the Emirates and the spine-tingling North London Forever starts playing, despite being from South London? You don't feel just a little tinge of jealousy?
The only tinge I feel is my clinch festing, sort of flinching up after hearing that. By the way, I don't know if anyone heard this on the broadcast. Did they start the game? Like, did the announcer count down kickoff and then say, "Are you ready?" And as they kicked off, he shouted that. I mean, there's just infinite amount of ways to just cringe us out.
Yeah, it's a weird. Like, I've never been infected by it. I don't get it.
No.
Every once in a while, especially when you're young, you maybe turn on a Champions League night and you hear "You'll Never Walk Alone," and you're like, all right, this is not too bad. You
can get it.
I've never got it before.
I only have bad experiences with that song. I don't know, what was it, one maybe we were at together, Amos, or was it a different one I was at? I think they might have scored late in the game against us in the Emirates. I was there anyway.
Oh, the Martinelli one, yeah.
Was that 1-0 as well? It was deflection off Acker or something like that?
His face,
Yeah, and that was with like 6 minutes to go. Full time goes, the whole place. No,
it's weird.
Painful.
It's really weird.
Yeah. It's not even a good song. No, the football version of contraception. Sweet. We'll call it a day there. Hugh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me on, both of you. It was great fun, and I'd love to do it again sometime soon.
I'm sure we will. Adam, thank you.
Thank you, Amos.
Listeners, thank you. Until next time, which of course will be tomorrow for our match day preview. We will see you later.